What do we want? I think that's an important question. What do we want to see happen in Gaza? What does victory look like for us? What does a happy ending to this war look like for us? I hear lots of different objectives being thrown out there, right? A lot of people, a lot of politicians, a lot of Israelis, a lot of diaspora Jews have different ideas over what the goal is. Let's think about them. We hear about Gaza becoming part of Israel again and renewing Jewish life there. Okay, that's a goal. We hear about destroying Hamas. That's a goal. We hear about rescuing the hostages, getting the hostages back. That's a goal. That's 3 so far, right? And we hear about the Trump plan to displace the Palestinians, to remove the Palestinians, to transfer the Palestinians out of Gaza. That seems to also be a goal that some people talk about. Then there's maybe what we'll call a much more abstract goal, which is like the developmental process that's taking place internally, like how Israel's changing and advancing internally as a result of the war. That's also a goal of the war, right? But what are more important to us? Like if we think about which one of these goals is important versus unimportant, or more important, then you know which you would support over others, which you would sacrifice to achieve another, right? Like meaning, if I have a choice between Israel having Gaza, being in charge of Gaza, Gaza being part of Israel and renewing Jewish life there, but with Palestinians, or Palestinians are gone and America owns it and Trump is building luxury hotels. What do I want? What's more important to me? I want Gaza. I want Gaza to be part of Israel. And I've gone through this process, I'm willing to have millions of Palestinians if it means I can have Gaza too. It's important to Gaza being part of Israel is important to me. It's been important to me since we lost it 20 years ago. I haven't given up on Gaza. I still am not giving up on Gaza. And I think we're actually practically closer now than we've ever been. But if we want it, and the Jews who do want it, like Daniela Weiss, right? Daniela Weiss is trying to spearhead efforts to renew Jewish life in Gaza. She has to think about this. Do we have a solution for the Palestinians? What's going to be? I think we have to look at something very important. Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, I think he was our greatest prime minister so far. He's also the leader of Lehi, the operational leader of Lehi, a good sternist. He, as prime minister, identified the greatest threat to the state of Israel and the nation of Israel is American efforts to take land away from us, to force us to give up what we liberated in the 6-Day War. From Shamir's perspective, that was the biggest threat to Israel, and his mission was to protect the land of Israel and to fill her with Jews. He saw that as his mission as prime minister. Okay? And he understood something else that's very important. He understood that the Western governments who want to take our land away from us, their greatest weapon in presenting this demand as moral and just is the Palestinian issue. Right? That the Palestinians are being weaponized by the West to force us to give up land. And we see that even today. There are 2 issues that frighten Western governments today regarding Israel. There's the issue of Israel retaking Gaza, or creating facts in the ground that make it impossible to give up the West Bank, meaning Israel getting bigger, or taking irreversible steps that ensure we're going to keep the territory that we've won. That's one thing that threatens the West on a very, very deep level, as is expressed to their governments. And then there's the issue of Israel transforming internally from like kind of a liberal Western society, if it ever really was that, to what they perceive to be like a fundamentalist Jewish society, represented by the ascension of certain political figures, this current government minus Likud, right? That's threatening to the West, that Israel is going to become like a Jewish Iran or whatever, right? They don't know. They don't, like, there are all sorts of like scare tactics in use right now. But in theory, neither of these are objectively bad, right? Like, okay, that this land is historically Jewish land, right? It's where our ancestors come from. It's where a lot of our history unfolded. We've been struggling to come back to this land for thousands of years, not just Netanya or Nahariya or Kfar Saba, but actually Bethlehem, Hebron, Jerusalem, Beit El, Shechem, Shiloh, right? These are places we've been struggling to come back to for thousands of years. Gaza. We're living in Gaza for centuries until the riots and massacres of 1929, and the British didn't let us come back. So how do they make it immoral that the Jews are in these places or that Israeli society is transforming? The Western media presents the constant assumption that this is bad for Palestinians. So it's actually important for us, if we're serious about being able to return to Gaza in a real way and to maintain our hold on Judea and Samaria on the West Bank, we have to figure out a solution to the Palestinian question that doesn't allow the West to weaponize the Palestinian issue against us. We have to. Part of it is a relationship dynamic, right? We have to get to the point where, because of us, right now we have a problem. It's a deep problem. And even though Prime Minister Netanyahu is the best we can hope for right now, there's something he says that really bothers me on a deep level. Whenever he presents this conflict as a conflict between civilization and barbarism, that's a very colonialist way of thinking, right? He's speaking like a colonizer. He's thinking like a colonizer. Civilization and barbarism. Like, we're part of the enlightened West, and he's part, and the people we're fighting are these savages. And we need to protect ourselves from the savages. And we're on the front line of Western civilization against the savages. It's a very racist way of thinking and a very colonialist way of thinking, and we need to stop. It's not healthy for us. Whatever we end up doing with the Palestinians, I think the first step is to be able to relate to ourselves and to them as to two local tribes that might have beef, might have a conflict. And if we have a conflict, we have to resolve it. Either we resolve it through fighting and winning, or maybe we could resolve it through peace. But we can only resolve it once we're thinking like we're a local tribe, they're a local tribe, and we both, we're and what's interesting is that the most extreme elements of the Jewish population in the West Bank does think this way. Meaning the thinking of the Jew in Yitzhar, or the Jew in Chavat Gilad, or the Jew in Bat Ayin, or the quote-unquote violent settlers, ones who actually attack Palestinians. The way they think is not like we're part of the West and they're savages. They don't think like that. They think we're a native tribe, they're a native tribe, and because there are more of them, we have to make them afraid of us. And we've been at war for over 100 years, obviously. Like, all of Israeli society relates to Palestinians as a population we've been at war with for over 100 years. But if we want that to stop, we have to start thinking and growing up and absorbing the criticism of our detractors. We have to think about some of their criticisms. But we can only do this when we're strong and secure and confident in ourselves. We have to have deep roots connecting us to our identity, to our Torah, to our land, to our history, to our destiny. Then we can engage with the narrative of the Palestinians, the experience of the Palestinians, the identity of the Palestinians without fear, without fearing that his identity is going to cancel out mine. My identity exists here regardless. I've been trying to come back to this land for thousands of years regardless. I have an obligation to possess the land regardless. That doesn't change if I find out the Zionists did some bad things. Doesn't change. So I think the first step is to changing the relationship dynamics is thinking of ourselves, not just saying we're indigenous as a Hasbara talking point, but to think of ourselves as indigenous, to indigenize, and to decolonize our thinking, and to really see ourselves as like a native tribe that belongs in the region. And then we could say, hey, you know what? Maybe the only way for us to be able to come back to Gaza is to create a good situation for Palestinians there. And maybe because we're the winners in this conflict, we've killed tens of thousands of people. We've destroyed Gaza. We've made it uninhabitable. We won. We're winning. I mean, the war is not totally over. They still have our hostages, and Hamas is still. We haven't even defined what victory looks like, but I think part of victory is, even according to our government, I think part of victory is that Israel has Gaza. But if you want to really have Gaza without all the look, the Western governments will be against because on a deep level, they're expressions of the spiritual force of the Fourth Empire. You guys know the Fourth Empire? The Empire of Esav, Edom, that's in our seat, that is actually on the world stage in Israel's place. We need to understand that Western civilization has to work against the Geulah because Western civilization is an expression of the Fourth Empire, and the Fourth Empire has replaced us. We have to replace them back. We have to take back our rightful place as the leader of humanity. And as Israel starts to come back to life, Western civilization declines. Right? This is a civilization that's been dominant since the time of the Roman Empire. Think it's coincidence that their decline begins when Israel comes back to life? The same century, right? We see this shift, and it's continuing. That's the real threat to Western civilization. Not radical Islam, not Arab immigration into European countries, not whatever they call the Marxist or neo-Marxist professors in the university, not wokeism. These aren't the real threats to Western civilization. The real threats to Western civilization is that Israel came back to life after 2,000 years. And according to the prophecy of our great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother Rivka, these two civilizations cannot coexist and be strong at the same time. When one is strong, the other is weak. Right? I saw a very interesting, I think, Kliyakar recently, that Esav tries to make Yaakov spiritually weak, meaning the United States and Europe try to westernize. They pump money into westernizing our society. And according to the Kliyakar, because Esav's bracha, the bracha Esav did receive from Yitzchak, is that when Yaakov is spiritually weak, Esav is not dominated by him. Right? It's a defense, whether they know it or not. Subconsciously, it's a defensive mechanism, trying to force a two-state solution on us, trying to westernize our society. These are ways that Western civilization, the Fourth Empire, is trying to protect itself from being eclipsed. Right? That's what they do. We need to recognize it. Then we know the war we're fighting. If we think we're just fighting a bunch of Arabs in Gaza, we don't know the war we're fighting. It's much bigger than that. It's a little piece of this war. And if we realize that the real enemy is using the Palestinian issue as a weapon against us, then maybe we realize that the best way to steal that weapon from them, to neutralize that weapon, is to actually resolve things with the Palestinians the right way. In a way where we're in charge of Gaza and we're able to rebuild Jewish life there. But we also take responsibility. Look, by the way, we talk about ribonut. We talk about sovereignty, right? To show that Israel has sovereignty over the land of Israel. The clearest expression of sovereignty is when you take responsibility. If I believe that Ramallah is part of my country, then obviously my government should be paying the teachers there, paying the doctors there, should be paying the policemen there, should be paying the bus drivers there, should be paying the garbage collectors there, no? If not, who says I'm sovereign? Right? But you take care of people. Make sure that the children of Bethlehem have health care and good education. How can I complain about the education they receive if I'm not willing to provide them education? Take responsibility. It's the clearest expression of sovereignty. So in Gaza, we're going to have to rebuild Gaza. Whoever takes over Gaza is going to have to rebuild it. People talk Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Emirates, Egypt, nonsense. Israel has to have Gaza, and that means Israel has to rebuild Gaza. A lot of construction projects now, a lot of infrastructure projects now. Believe me, destroyed the place. Great opportunity. We can create tens of thousands of jobs for Palestinians. We'll be getting Israeli salaries to rebuild Gaza. Wow. It's an opportunity to show we're taking responsibility. But we have to be willing to say we want responsibility because we don't have a right to this land. We don't have a right to this land. We have an obligation to the land. We have a responsibility to the land. We have to possess the land, and we're responsible for all the human beings who live here. There might be human beings who we decide are enemies and can't be here. Fine. But there are also human beings who can live here, and we need to take responsibility for them. Okay? So we need to define what we want to see, what's important to us. I've gone through this process. I really think that what's important to me is that Gaza be part of Israel. We reverse the disengagement of 2005, and we rebuild Jewish life in Gaza. And that might mean that we also have to offer a better future to the Palestinians in Gaza, under us, with us. And that also might mean, most of the Palestinians living in Gaza are actually refugees from elsewhere in 1948. Akko, Haifa, Yafo, Beersheba. What about offering them, if they want, everybody can choose, brand new apartments, mortgage free, size determined by the size of your family, in the place you fled in 1948. Israel builds it. You get a free apartment if you want, or you stay in Gaza. Up to you. Right? You want to go back to Haifa? Great. We're building an apartment complex in Haifa just for you guys, just for all the Palestinians in Gaza who are from Haifa in 1948. If you want to go back, tell us. If you don't want to go back, great, you'll stay here. Offer. Right? Listen to some of the great. Some of it's true. I'm not saying we have to. There's another option. Kill them all. But you have to ask yourself a question. Which is the bigger Kiddush Hashem? Which is the bigger plot twist? Now, if we build them, here's a problem. When I say things like this, when I talk about building them apartment complexes, people are, what are you, crazy? They're the enemy. What are you, weak, soft? I want to do it as a strong person does it, meaning a strong person can use violence and a weak person can use violence, and they don't look the same. A strong person can make gestures towards reconciliation, and a weak person can also. As a strong person who just killed tens of thousands of people there, I want to come and say, here's an idea. What do you guys think? Would you like this? Obviously, we have conditions. Obviously, there are things that we want.